Class number 8 for Azon Overhaul is all about niche expansion. This is where we are adding to our existing website in terms of creating new pages and expanding the amount of content that we are currently covering within the niche that we are targeting. So in today's class, we are going to be completing all of the construction work that is remaining for our overhaul plan. And this will involve all the new pages that we are going to create on the site, as well as connecting these new pages to the existing live website. In the final class of the Azon Overhaul series, I'm going to be teaching you guys about what to do in the future after your website is completed. That way you can look back over the work from your overhaul and decide whether it helped you to accomplish your goals or not, and whether or not you might need to be doing more work to actually get to where you were trying to get to with that particular site. So that will be in the next class, the next and final class of Azon Overhaul. For today's class, we're going to be talking about these expansion plans, and then I'm going to be demonstrating a number of these tactics for you, as well as doing some actual work on my website in terms of adding some new pages to it. The reason why I'm going to be demonstrating some stuff today that I'm not actually going to be doing on my live website is simply because I don't necessarily know how you have created your existing Amazon site that you're working on with this overhaul project. And so I wanted to make sure that I could address essentially any way that you had originally created your site to tell you how to proceed moving forward. Whether this was based off of one of my Amazon site building courses, or even if you build it with someone else's course or completely different software from what I'm using. I wanted this to still be able to apply to you. So I am going to be doing a couple demonstrations along those lines today as well, in addition to completing the work on my site. So to start with, I want to talk about expansion plans. What you need to do at this point in the Azon Overhaul series is to figure out what work still needs to be done from your overhaul list. And if you are following the previous class and completed all the work on your existing website, then the only thing you should really be left to do at this point is to create the new pages on your site. So this would be any new informational articles that you wanted to be adding to the site about various topics. It could also be new product review pages that you want to create on the site. So the first thing that you want to do is to look at your overhaul list, look at the things that you have not completed, and start making your own separate list for the work that you need to take care of today, starting with identifying all of those new pages that you need to create. The next thing you need to do is to think about how these new pages are going to be connecting to the rest of your live website. If these new pages are going to be organized into a category that does not currently exist on your website, then you're going to have to create some new category pages. So at this point, you do need to try to identify what new category pages you're going to need to create, if any. For my overhaul plans, I'm just expanding within the confines of my current categories. So personally, I will not have any new categories to create. However, that is one of the things I'm going to be demonstrating for you guys today. The next thing is to identify the home page and or category pages that are going to need to be updated. Again, thinking about where these new pages are going to connect in with the rest of your live website. You need to think about the category pages that they're going to connect to, and then ultimately how those category pages connect in with your entire website. So for example, if I pull up my live website here, I am on my home page. I have my category pages linked up from the top of the home page here. I also, though, have a number of informational article and product review article links that are on this home page as well. So if I were to add in a new category to this website, I would obviously need to be editing my home page to add in a new section kind of like this for whatever that new category was. However, even the way that I am doing my overhaul, by adding in some new brand pages, for example, I might still need to edit this home page just to add in an extra link for the new brands that I add to the website. One other example, you have the menus about the top of your page. This also relates to the categories that you're going to have on your website. So if you're adding a new category, you may also have to edit your menus to be able to add that category into your menu system. Then on my individual category pages, I'm on my brands page here. If I'm adding in any new brands to my website, then this page is going to have to be edited to add a new section about those new brands and to then link them up to the rest of my live website. So you can see how, depending on what it is you are trying to add into your site with this overhaul plan, it can kind of vary depending on the new pages you're going to end up needing to create, and also the existing pages that you may need to go back into and make some adjustments on. So once you have a list put together of all of the changes that you're going to need to make here, the next thing I recommend to do is to simply work backwards with everything that you're going to be doing here. So for example, I'm going to be having a new page called Chez Moi Collection. This page is going to be grouped under the brands page. So I'm going to need to edit my brands page, and this is going to be a new page. But then to add a link to Chez Moi from my home page with my home page menu system, I'm also going to need to edit my home page. So this is basically what my expansion plan would kind of look like at this point, just based off of this one page that I would be adding. The other pages that I'm going to be adding are just going to be more brand pages. So these are the only main or category pages of my site that I'm going to have to mess with for my particular overhaul. But you could certainly have a situation where you have new category pages that need to be created to be able to connect all of this new content into your website. So when I'm talking about working backwards, what I mean is to start at the bottom of my list, this new content that I have. I'm going to create these pages on my website first, and then I'm going to work backwards. I'm going to go up to this step, and then I'm going to work backwards up to this step. The reason why I work backwards when it comes to an expansion especially is simply because you're dealing with a live website here. If your Amazon site is a successful site like mine is and has traffic on it, you don't want to be connecting uncompleted areas up to the rest of your live site. So by completing my individual articles and product pages first, and then working on the category page that's going to connect this stuff with the rest of the site, and then working backwards to my home page, I'm ensuring that anytime I link up something from my existing live website, that those areas are going to be completed already instead of being a page that's simply under construction. So that's why I recommend working backwards. If you happen to have zero traffic on your site while you're doing this overhaul work, you could consider doing it in whatever order makes more sense to you. But I still feel like in that case, it makes more sense to work backwards simply because you're wanting to add links to these pages that are above for the pages that are down at the bottom of your list. But if you haven't created these new pages yet, you don't necessarily know what those links are going to be yet. So again, another reason why it's simply easier to work backwards. Just like in the previous class, whenever you complete something off of this expansion plan work, make sure you're checking off your completed work before you proceed, especially if you have a lot that you're going to be doing in this phase of your overhaul plan. So now next, I want to talk about new page creation. I'm going to be working backwards, just like I recommended for you to do. So I'm going to start by creating my new content on this website, and then I'll work backwards to connect this new content in with the rest of my live site. Before I actually dive into creating a page and showing you guys how this part works, I first want to talk about something that's really important in terms of how you will create these new pages on your own website. This is a discussion really about the fundamental differences between two types of content that you can create on a WordPress website, and that is a WordPress page versus a WordPress post. Just to ensure that everyone is aware of what I am referring to here, within WordPress, you have the post section and you also have the pages section. Technically, you can create new content on a WordPress website using either one of these two types of pages. When I say the word page, in general, when I'm just talking about creating a new page on my website or creating a product review page or an informational article page or something like that, I use the word page very loosely. I'm not referring to a WordPress page specifically. That page could technically be either one of the two. However, I made to be really sure in this particular class especially to specifically mention a WordPress page or a WordPress post if I am talking about a very particular type of content within your site. The reason for that is it is important before you start your overhaul here to think about a couple of things. You need to think about how you're going to be adding this new content into your live website, and you should also be thinking about how your existing content on your live site was created. On Down Comforter Guide, I actually created this entire website out of nothing but pages. There's 21 pages on this site, and shouldn't be anything listed over here. a draft that I likely used for some kind of a training class, most likely. This is definitely not live content, I know that. So my entire website is created out of WordPress pages, but apparently it doesn't want to do that. But I could have created my site out of pretty much nothing but WordPress posts if I had wanted to. The reason why you need to be worrying about this at this point is because it can affect how you end up connecting this content with your live site. When you're using a 100% page system, kind of like I have done on Down Comforter Guide, this is also the way that I taught for it to be done in the Azon Home Study course. If you followed that particular series to build your original Amazon site. Using the 100% WordPress page method, what you end up having to do is link these pages together. When you see the home page or one of my category pages, such as this page right here, these areas within my page that are linking out to the individual pages of my site, this is all done using custom HTML and CSS coding. Same thing goes right here for my home page. This is not a WordPress system that allows it to be output in this manner. This is coding that I did myself to design it in this particular way. Now I teach how this is done in the Azon Home Study course, but there are other ways to do it. You can use a WordPress system that actually lists the new content on your site, kind of like you're seeing on this brands page here. The only difference is that you really don't have a lot of control over how that information is going to be spit out on your live website. So with all that said, first look at how you created your content originally on this website. Since you're working with an existing website here, it is most likely going to be easier to just stick with whatever method you are already using to create that content and to link it into the rest of your live website. However, during this particular class, I'm going to be demonstrating both methods for you. The manual linking method, which is what I've done on Down Comforter Guide, and then also the automatic method where you use the WordPress post system. The automatic method takes advantage of these WordPress categories to organize our content, but I really don't like the default way that this system is handled, and so I create my own custom category pages when I actually do use this system. I have taught the post system in other training classes of mine, so it is possible that you may have built your site that way. If you're working off of the Azon 30-day challenge, for example, I heavily used the posts for all of the informational and the product review content on that particular site. So I am going to be demonstrating both of these tactics for you today and showing you what the differences are, and you should be able to see, once you get to experience both of them for yourself, which one might work out best for you, which one will fit into the way your existing website was built. So that way you can kind of decide how to proceed from here. So with that said, I'm doing 100% pages on my website. And so that is what I'm going to be using to initially create this new content that I'm going to be adding. So I'm going to go to Pages and Add New, and I'm going to start working on adding in my new page on the Chez Moi collection. This is my content here for the Chez Moi collection page. This is something that 2 classes ago we took care of with all of our writing. So whatever new pages you're going to be creating on your site, you should also likely have some kind of a text file to go along with these new pages. And to a certain extent, you are just going to be copying and pasting information from your text file over to your new page, at least with the initial parts of the setup. So for example, I'm going to be starting by adding in my page title. Now the page title is something that's fairly self-explanatory in a lot of cases, but I wanted to mention how I kind of come about what page title I'm going to use for a page, and even more importantly than that, whether or not I allow the WordPress system to generate a URL for me or not. After you've been working on a page and you add in a title to it, WordPress at some point will generate a URL for you for that page. You can then leave it as it is or modify it if you want to. In a lot of cases though, I actually find myself modifying it when it comes to the product review pages that I'm creating on a site. In almost all cases of product review pages and brand pages and things of that nature, I will shorten the URL to the very basic keyword that I am trying to target on that page, often being the brand name or the product name. So for this page, I'll end up reducing my URL to say nothing but Chez Moi. It won't say Chez Moi Collection Down Alternative Comforters, even though this is my full title. Now I'm using this full title for the page because I'm going after a couple of particular keywords that are all centered around this specific topic right here. Chez Moi Collection, Chez Moi Collection having to do with comforters or down alternative comforters. There are a number of combinations of keywords that use some combination of these 5 words right here. And that's essentially my primary goal with this particular page, is to try to get some kind of a keyword ranking on some of these relational product phrases. So I'm going after a direct targeting of those phrases in my title simply because this accurately describes what my entire page is going to be about. There's not going to be any content on this page that steps outside of these 5 words right here. So with that said, I move on to adding in my page content now. My page content is much more information here. Now this content is not already styled up or anything for me. It's just basic article content written in, and once I get it into the WordPress site, I then go back in and start to format this new content to look better on my page. Ultimately, if I just publish this page as it is, it's still going to have all those words in it for the search engine to look at, but I want to make this a little more appealing for my site visitors. I want them to be able to land on this page, and if they're looking for a specific piece of information about this product, they'll easily be able to find that. In addition to that, it just simply organizes all of my content by having simple things such as these headers that run through my content that just simply summarize what the next paragraph or a couple of paragraphs worth of text are going to be about. So I'll just go back through these and make them bold so they can stand out a little more. I have a couple more of these going throughout my page here. I also use some other tactics along the way to break up my content, and this might be something as simple as a list. Using the WordPress unordered list or an ordered list. With unordered, you get bullet points, and with ordered, you get numbers. So for here, I'm just going to turn this into a unordered list to list all these different comforter sizes that this product comes in. And so that gives me the basics of taking all this content and just styling it up a little bit. And this just simply helps to break up what would ordinarily just be a really long article. This could be just a big long run of 882 words, or this could be an organized article full of the same amount of content. In a lot of ways, it can mean the same thing to the search engine, but it can be a lot more helpful to the people that are actually viewing your website. Now, if I'm working on some kind of an informational article, I'll usually use the add media function here to add some kind of an image or a video or something like that to the page. Especially on longer articles, I might even add a couple of them. I might put one towards the top and one around the middle and one further down towards the bottom. This, again, the goal is just to help and break up all of that content so it's a little easier to digest for people. With product review pages, though, I often find myself avoiding adding in some kind of a default image because I usually have images already that I'm going to be using through the Amazon ads that I put on the page, because I'm going to have a picture of those Amazon products. So now, beyond the basic article content, let's see, WordPress finally gave me a URL up here. Once you start editing the content down here, typically, WordPress will then go ahead and generate this. So as you can see, I have a big long URL that's generated for this page. I'm just going to chop this down to say chez moi and click on OK. And this is going to be a nice short direct URL to be able to get to this page. So this, when viewed from a search engine's perspective, it makes it very obvious to, say, Google, that my entire page is about chez moi. And it gives me a much higher likelihood of being able to rank for phrases that have that word in it. But I don't necessarily have to keep repeating that word all throughout my content. It really only occurs, I don't know, 5 maybe times or so throughout this whole thing, possibly a little more than that. But ultimately, I don't have to blast that word on this page. I can talk about the product, and Google helps to associate all of those other topics in with this. So when I get searches having to do with those topics and chez moi, I have a lot better likelihood of ranking for them. So beyond this basic setup of my page here, the other main thing I am interested in is adding additional settings and things of that nature to my page that might be needed. I use the SEO Ultimate plugin, and it provides this SEO settings box where I can enter in the title tag and the meta description. I can also enter in the same kind of information for social networks. I highly recommend setting up this information for your pages. Even if you're not using SEO Ultimate, you're probably using some kind of an SEO plugin, and it will still allow you to insert this information into your individual pages. So whatever plugin you're using, do make sure that you are able to punch that stuff in. The title, I usually just transfer from my main page title that I was using. So I'll use the same thing here again for the title tag and also for the social networks listing. My description is just going to be a short summary of this page, but I also try to keep in mind what keywords I'm actually trying to target. And I'll try to put not necessarily those specific keyword phrases in, but I'll make sure that I'm talking about relational subjects. So, for example, in my meta description here, I'm going to talk about sleeping habits. Sleeping habits vary from person to person. Some like it hot and some cold. The Chez Moi comforters, down comforters I'll say, I'm just going to say that the Chez Moi down comforters are perfect for both. They have both a lightweight and a heavyweight version that I'm going to be promoting on this particular page. So I will have content on this page that's going to be still in line with what this description is about. So I'm going to transfer that over here to the social networks listing. This just simply allows for, if someone tries to share one of my pages on Facebook, it fills in my title and this description here as content on the Facebook website. I believe the only other thing I'm going to be setting here is just to make sure my sidebars are not being shown on this page. And I'm pretty much ready to publish, maybe minus one little thing on this page. However, this is not something that will apply to every page that you create. Just the product pages where you're going to have an Amazon ad. Obviously, you will want to go through the process of creating an advertisement to be able to add on to those pages. I'm using product style. I demonstrated this in the previous class when I was setting up my IKEA advertisements. So I'm not going to be putting much focus on that at this point in the training. However, if you are still unsure about how to use this plugin to create Amazon ads, I would recommend revisiting the previous class where I go over that in more detail. So if you are going to have Amazon ads on any given page that you're creating, simply insert them into the page once you are finished putting the whole thing together. And then you're ready to publish. So I can go and take a quick little peek at this page just to make sure everything is set up and looking okay. It looks like my ads are maybe a little too large for the area that I have available here. So I'm going to correct this issue real quick. I'm just going to make these things sit next to each other instead of trying to be one on top of each other. Take one more peek at this. There we go, that's a little better. So after I have my new page created in, I simply continue and repeat this process for any new pages that I'm going to be adding in to this site. Now I do have a couple more pages that I'm going to be adding into this site. However, all of that is simply going to be a repeat of what I have just shown you, And so I'm not going to be doing those during the actual live class, but you could revisit this site in the future and see a couple of additional brand pages that I have added to it in addition to Shavon. So the next thing I want to talk about is moving on from that new page creation. Once you have created all of the new pages that you're going to be adding onto your site, then you can proceed on to worry about the structure of your site. The structure of your site is going to involve the creation of new category pages. It can also involve the editing of existing category pages and/or your home page, and it can even involve updating your menu. Now, I'm going to be walking you through a number of the menu generation strategies that I use for building sites, whether it's built with WordPress pages or WordPress posts. But before I actually get into those individual demos, I'm going to talk about this in just a little bit more detail here for a moment. To start with, the new category creation. If you created any new pages or posts on your site that didn't fit into one of the categories that already exist, then you're going to end up needing to create a new category. Now, I create these category pages as a WordPress page, and this actually stands for either tactic that I use in terms of manually linking this content and pages that are associated with this category, or letting an automated WordPress system do all of that linking for me. So in either case, I use a WordPress page. Now, I don't need any new categories on my particular site. However, if you do need to create some on yours, just simply go into Add New Page. You can kind of see what I have done with my brands page, for example. I am going to have to be editing this particular page. My brands page is what you should think of in terms of creating a new category page on your site. You just go to Pages and Add New. You give it a fairly short title that also has some kind of a direct reference to what that whole category is about. It might even be some kind of a keyword phrase that you're trying to target. In most cases, I will also drastically shorten the URL of my category pages. So for this page, I just make it say brands. I try not to repeat any words that might be in my domain name in my URLs, if at all possible, especially with these main pages of my site. So when I say brands, it's understood that I'm talking about Down Comforter brands for this particular page. Now, when it comes to content, you really don't need to worry about putting a lot of content on these category pages that you create. These 5 sentences or 5 paragraphs, actually I think each paragraph is just 1 sentence at that, so it is 5 sentences. This is all of the article content essentially that I have on this particular page. Everything else on this page has to do with the individual pages that are being linked from here. So here is my content of the category page, and then everything else has to do with the individual pages that I'm linking to. So with that said, if you need to create a new category page on your own website, do try to add some kind of content, text content, to the top of that page, but you don't need to worry about having a whole bunch of it. I shoot for somewhere in the neighborhood of a couple hundred words, maybe 200-300 words or so. It just kind of depends on the category, how much information, general information I might have to say about it, in addition to what else would be found under the individual listings that are below on that page. So now with any site that's kind of like mine, where you're not going to be creating new category pages and you're just adding into the existing categories that are already on your site and you're just adding new pages to it, you would just have to go back in and edit these pages to connect your new pages to your live website. So I'm going to need to go into my brands page, edit this, and to add a new section, kind of like the IKEA section or the Pacific Coast section. I'm going to need to add a new section like that for Chez Moi now. I'm not going to demonstrate this quite yet though. I'm going to get to that in just a moment, and I'm going to demonstrate manual linking like I'm going to have to do with Down Comforter Guide, and then I will also move on to demonstrate the automatic linking tactic. The last thing I want to mention before I jump onto that though is the menus. If you created any kind of a new menu or new category on your site, you're going to need to add that into your existing menus. This could be just the top menu like you see on my site here. It's possible you may even have other menus on your site though, sidebar menus or even menus in the footer of your page. Whatever kind of menus you may have there, go to Appearance and Menus. You should be able to simply make some quick edits or additions to these menus to add in new category pages to these areas. Again, this is only something that you would have to do if you actually created a new category for this overhaul project though. For my site, I have not added new categories, so I can simply leave my menu structure alone here. So what I want to do now is to talk about my strategies for both manual and automatic menus. This also involves the category and the home pages. It just kind of depends on what exactly you're trying to edit and how you want information to be displayed on those pages. Now, on my site, I have both manual homepage menus and also manual category page menus. I did these in the original Azon Home study course, where I taught how to set up a menu like this, and also taught how to set up a menu like I had on my category page that I was just on a moment ago. Well, I didn't want people to have to rely on that older system that I taught in the Azon Home study course. I went back and revisited that, and I realized that I actually didn't have code generators for this section. It was in the guidebook. It simply walked you through how to do this kind of coding yourself, and it gave you a template that you could use and modify. Well, I actually mentioned code generators in a previous class, so I was just like, okay, this isn't going to fly. I'm going to go and make some code generators. So I took the original code template from the Azon Home study course and created code generators for you guys for both the homepage menu system and also for the category page menu system. With that said, I want to demonstrate how these code generators work for you so you can use them on your own sites if you need to. However, it's also important to consider before you actually try to dive into doing one of these things, whether or not it's something you need to be doing on your site. Depending on how your existing site looks already, using one of my code generators and trying to add, let's say you're creating a new category on your site. Let's say you're adding in this brands category, but your site isn't designed like this already. Just generating the code for this one little brand section and plopping it on your homepage would likely look out of place. However, if you had used the Azon Home Study course originally to create your site, and you now need to create a new category to go onto it, this should be really, really simple to generate the code to simply copy and paste into your site, and it'll all have a uniform look to it. However, if you did not use that tactic before, and maybe you like the look of it and you want to redo the home page or a category page of your site, that's certainly okay if you do want to go through the efforts of doing something like that. But I would recommend considering whether it would just be best to stick with however your site was designed originally and just continue that strategy moving forward with this expansion. With that said though, if you decide to use one of my code generators, I want to make sure you understand how this works. For either of my code generators, I have links to these two pages provided for you guys in the guidebook for Azon Overhaul class number 8. One is for the homepage menus, and the other is for the category menus. On either of these two generators, though, if you scroll all the way to the bottom, you're going to see CSS coding. You will also see this down at the bottom of this one. This box contains all the CSS coding that you're going to need. Just make sure that you end up getting everything selected because there is more content further down in the boxes. If you decide to use one of these code generators, you are going to need to take the CSS coding from the relevant generator. If you use the category generator, you're going to need this category CSS. If you decide to use the homepage menu, you're going to need to use this homepage CSS. If you use both of them somewhere on your website, then you're going to need both chunks of this CSS code. Well, what you're going to want to do is select all this CSS code and copy and paste it into the appropriate area to get it to display in your theme. I have taught Weaver 2 and more recently Weaver Extreme usage for WordPress themes, and so I do provide the instructions on how you can find the exact area to copy and paste this code into. For example, in Weaver Extreme, which I'm using on this site, I just go to Weaver Extreme Admin, then I go into Main Options and Fonts and Custom, and I have this Custom CSS Rules box. And so this is where all of my code gets pasted into. I actually already have this code pasted in because this is the design that I used to build my site originally. So I actually don't need to be pasting my code in. However, let's say you already have code there that's on your site, and then you want to go in and add this new code. What I would recommend to do is just go down to the bottom of your coding here, make a blank line, and then that's where you're going to want to paste in all of your new code. Simple as that. The thing that you need to understand, though, is that the CSS coding is only needed one time. No matter how many times you generate code using the homepage menu system here, you're only going to need this CSS at the bottom one time. You copy and you paste this into your theme one time, and then you can use this menu generation system as many times as needed on any page of the entire website. The only reason you would want to get this code again is if you are working on a different website at some point. Then for each new website, you would need to add that code in. Same thing applies for the category menu coding at the bottom. You only need this one time, no matter how many times you use the category HTML generator, and also no matter how many different categories you might have on your site. So once again, just one time for the CSS, no matter which code generator you end up using. If you use both though, make sure you do get the code from both of the generators. It is necessary. So with that said, hopefully that's understood now. I want to talk about how this actually works so you can understand how to use these code generators for your own websites. This homepage menu generator, I'll start with this one and show you how this works. Now I'm going to show you the live page here so you can see what this is going to look like in the end, and then also how it's getting punched in on the homepage menu, and it should help you to understand what information needs to go where much easier. So now, the homepage menu generator, I need to generate code using it one time for each category that I have on my site. So I have 3 categories. I have the buying guide, I have consumer concerns, and I have brands. So if I was creating this homepage from scratch, I would need to use that homepage generator 3 different times. One time for the buying guide box, another time for the consumer concerns box, and a final time for the brands box. The other important thing to remember with this homepage menu generator is that it's meant to be used in multiples of 3. As you see on my page here, these boxes sit beside each other and stretch across the width of the page. As long as you have your sidebars disabled on your home page, then it should fit 3 of these boxes across the page. However, if you had, say, 4 categories on your website and you added the code in for 4 of these boxes, you would have one row up at the top here with 3, and then your second row would just have 1 box sitting over here in the bottom left-hand corner all by itself. It'll simply look out of place, or maybe like it wasn't an intentional design if you don't use it in multiples of 3. So if you have 3 categories, or 6, or 9, or 12, or 15, or so on, you could use this particular menu generation system to create your homepage. Otherwise, if it's not a multiple of 3, consider using some other tactic to put your homepage together. For my site, while I already have these menus created, I am technically going to need to edit this one menu that's over here on the right-hand side, because I want to add in a new link now to this new page that I've created. I don't necessarily have to redo the whole page, but it would actually be easier for me to possibly use the code generator to just regenerate this entire box and then just replace the code that I have on my site with that new coding. This will also help me to be able to demonstrate to you how this code generator system works. So I want to flip back over to the generator now, and we're going to talk about each of these items that are listed here, and so you can understand what information is supposed to go in each of these boxes to help you generate that coding. The very first item here, check if this box will be in the right column. It's a little checkbox here you can tick on or off. The only time you want this to be ticked on is if you're generating the code for one of the right-hand columns. So for the first box, I would not tick it. For this one, I would not tick it. For the brands box, though, I will need to tick this. This is the box that will be in the right-hand column. If I had more categories that were put on this site, let's say I had 6, the very last category that would go in the second row all the way in the right-hand column, I would also want to make sure I ticked this box for that particular one too. This simply helps to ensure that the coding for designing all of this is correct. If you don't tick this box on that right-hand column category, it's not going to look right. That box is most likely going to end up being bumped down to a new row because there's just not going to be room for everything. So now everything else here is going to be different text that I punch in, and some of it is going to be website addresses that I put in for various links. To start with, I have the category title link text. This is all the way up at the top here, the main title for this entire box. So this one is going to say brands. Next up, I have the category slug. The category slug is the URL for this page, but it's just this one little part of it, just the brands part of the URL. So I'm going to put brands here for my category slug. Now I have the category image URL. This is going to be simply an image that I have showing up in this box. So this would be the URL of this particular image. I'll take the image location here, and that'll give me the correct URL. Now, how you would go about getting this URL if you were creating this from scratch, or how you would go about getting, say, your category slug, it's all where this page is located. For example, the category page, the URL that it's located, you look at the URL for it, and you just copy the basic word or words that are used for that slug. Everything in between the slash marks. For the images, though, you can go into Media and Add New and upload an image, and then I simply want the thumbnail version of it. You can see in my URL right here, it says 150 by 150. That's what I'm looking for, is an image with exactly the dimensions of 150 by 150. And that is what WordPress will give you if you simply upload an image through this media system here. So you can take any one of these images that you already have, and this thing generates thumbnails for you automatically. I can actually take this address here just to show you an example, and I can add dash 150x 150 to it, and it's going to give me a thumbnail of that particular image. So whatever the URL is for the full image, just add in this one little piece right before the dot ending for your file name, and you'll get that thumbnail. So that's how I obtain the slug and the image URL here. My description is just going to be a brief bit of content right here that shows up in this little category box. So for a new category, you would simply want to write in a short descriptive sentence about that particular category. Everything else now, link number 1 through 5, these areas are to allow you to create these links if you want to. If you decide not to put in any of these links here, then it's just going to move this image more into the center, and you just won't have any text links there. It's quite okay to do it that way. It just kind of depends on how you want your site to look ultimately, and whether you want these individual articles linked up from your homepage or not. For mine, since I have used links already, I'm going to continue doing so. I already have 3 links that are there. So for this menu, I would actually want to keep those existing links present and transfer those in. So I'm just providing the text and the URL to get to those live pages on my website. And then I'm just going to add in the new page that I have created, my Chez Moi page. Once you have all this information punched in, you can then click on this Generate button down at the bottom, and this will spit out all the coding that you need for it. So you just copy and paste all this and just put it into your live site wherever you want that box to show up. So on my site here, I have my basic content, and then I have these 3 sections of boxes. I like to keep mine separated by a blank line within the WordPress editor here, just to help things be a little easier in terms of browsing through the content of this. If I needed to edit one of these menus like I've just done, for example, I can easily tell, which section of the menu is which. I don't have to actually go through and actually read all this text inside of the coding to try to figure it out by separating it this way. So now with this one simple little update, I can update my page and go and take a look, and now I have just simply added in a new text link to it. Now obviously, if all you needed to do was add in a simple text link like I had done, sure, it would be a lot easier to just go down and find the relevant section of this code and add in a new link like so, just editing the text and editing the URL for it. Just as a quick little example here, pretty easy to modify or add to these links. However, I wanted to show you the full code generator for this homepage menu, just so you can understand how this works. So now, if you use the code generator for the homepage menu, after you are done, take this code right here. In this tiny little box that's standing by itself, it's under the HTML usage instructions. You want to copy this and put it down below each set of 3 boxes that you have. This is just going to help to ensure that all of your content looks okay on your site. What this is doing is ensuring that this CSS coding can't take over the rest of your page. You're not going to really notice any changes here except just a little bit of extra height was created. If I didn't have that coding there and I was viewing my site on a different kind of a device, maybe something where I didn't have this much space. For example, if I collapse my page down, you can see how these boxes all get squeezed on top of each other now instead. So this might be like it would look viewing it on a cell phone, for example. Without that extra coding added down to the bottom of it, all of this text that is down below all of these boxes can end up running next to your very last box here. So this simply helps to create a separation. It says, okay, we're done floating all this stuff together, and we want to essentially start a new paragraph now. So that ensures that this content starts on its own new fresh line, whatever it is that you have down below your menus here. With that said, I want to move on to showing you the category page. The category page is going to basically work the same way here. For each new post or informational article or product review article that I've added on that's going to be sorted into each given category, I want to edit that category and manually add in this coding. Again, this is because I have used 100% WordPress pages on my website. That's why I'm doing this manual linking method. And again, I'll be moving on to demonstrate the automatic method here once I finish showing you the manual stuff. So for the category page, I'm wanting to create a new section of content just like this that's going to be for that new product page that I have added, and that's my Chez Moi page. So I want to go over here to this category menu generator and punch in the required information. Now this is a lot easier and quicker to use than the previous one. Technically, you could even use this not on a category page. You could actually use this generator on the home page of your website, as long as you're okay with it looking like this, having some content at the top of your home page and then having each of the categories that are on your site featured going down your home page like you see on this page here. So if you wanted to use that on your home page, maybe you only had 2 categories on your site, and so you couldn't use the home page menu generator because you don't have a multiple of 3. You could just use this 2 times and put that on your home page. I use this though for my category pages to add links in to the individual content pages that I have created on my site. So my new Chez Moi page, I need to generate HTML for a menu for that new page to get added in to my brands page. So for my page title, I'm actually going to go a little shorter. I had used Chez Moi Collection Down Alternative Comforters for my full page title. However, I'm just going to go Chez Moi Collection because on my brands page, I don't repeat the fact that all of these are down comforters. That's understood. They're all down comforter brands. So I'm just repeating the brand names. So I'm going to maintain that same kind of a look here, and I'm just going to say Chez Moi Collection. For my page URL, I simply need the link to that new page that I've created. So my Chez Moi page, whatever your permalink is, you can view the page on your live website if you want to, copy the URL that is up here. That's what I want to punch in for this page URL, downcomforterguide.com/Chez Moi. Now for the image URL, I can go into Add Media and add a new image in through here if I want. actually already have an image here for Chez Moi though. So I'm just going to go in here and copy and paste this URL that I've already uploaded. And so that's going to go right there. Now I have the read more text. I can leave this how it is. That's actually how I have it on my site currently. This read more link that's down at the bottom. You can simply leave it as read more. It's generic. It'll work for any post that you use. If you wanted to try to customize them, it can certainly have SEO value. However, it'll take simply more time to do. You might want to do something like read more about Penzon, read more about IKEA, read more about Pacific Coast. Would just be a fairly generic way of customizing the read more text. Since I've only done read more on my other pages though, I'm going to continue that trend here. Now for the description, I have a summary already pre-written for this particular page that I'm just going to be pasting in. And so this is just a couple of sentences worth of content that's going to describe this page, and this is content that's going to show up on the category page though. So I do try to custom write this content. I don't want it to be just the same content that I have from that page itself. So for example, this little summary here, it's not an excerpt of my main article or anything. This is all custom content that I'm adding into my category page this way. So I have all my information filled out. I can now click on generate and get the coding that I need. So this works the same way that it did before. I can actually be even more carefree with this now because I can just simply punch this code into the bottom of my page. If I had a whole bunch of new categories, or new pages to add on to this, I just keep generating code, keep adding in to the bottom of my content like so, as I generate each new section of coding. Once I'm completely finished, then I can simply click to update my page. Go and view my live brands page, and now I have a new section for the Chez Moi collection. I click on this, and it's automatically going to take me to my live Chez Moi page. So again, this is why I was talking about in the beginning of the class to work backwards. Because once I go ahead and put that link into the page, on my category page or on my home page like I've done here, these links are automatically live. If there was live traffic on my site and they happened to go ahead and click on something, they wouldn't end up on a page that's under construction or a page that simply doesn't exist anymore or something like that. So now that I've talked about manually creating these menus on the home page and or on the category pages, I want to move on to talk about how to do all this automatically. By automatically, what I mean here is you have to do some initial work to get this system set up for you. But once you have it set up, when you create new content, new informational or new product review content on your site, they will automatically get linked in to your live website without you having to go back into the home page and or category pages to edit them, like I just did to add in the link to the Chez Moi collection. Using this automated tactic, as soon as I had created that Chez Moi content page, it would have automatically been live on my website for me. I wouldn't have had to do anything else. There are advantages and disadvantages to each. I have used both tactics and had successful websites with both tactics. So it's not necessarily that one works and one doesn't. a lot of times it's a matter of personal preference. I like, in a lot of cases, being able to heavily customize my category pages. The page I was just working on where I linked in the Chez Moi collection, all of that's custom done. It's custom coding. The pages are linked in manually. It's not using some kind of a default system that I don't have control over. Ultimately, this automated category system within WordPress does severely limit the amount of control that you have over your content. However, I have some ways that I've worked around these types of things to be able to still get as much control as possible while still utilizing the automated system. So the manual system I just showed you, I originally taught that in the Azon Home Study course. This automated system is something you would likely be using, say, if you came from the Azon 30-Day Challenge series. So I have taught both of these types of approaches before. Before I get into showing you this, though, in order to use this automated tactic in the exact manner that I'm teaching it today, there are some requirements that you will have to meet, and you need to meet all three of these requirements. Number one is you must be using the Weaver theme. I'm going to be demonstrating it using Weaver Extreme. Technically, you can still do this using the older Weaver theme, Weaver 2. So if you do happen to still be using that theme, it'll work very, very similar to this, but there may be a couple of minor differences here and there. Number two is you must use WordPress pages for your category pages. And number three is that you must use WordPress post for your informational and or your product pages. Earlier in today's class, I was talking about the differences between WordPress posts and WordPress pages a little bit. In order to use this automated tactic, you basically need to create most of your website content as a WordPress post. This would be all of your informational and all of your product pages. They all need to be a post. Everything else, the category pages, the home page, any other miscellaneous pages that you might have on the site, like an About Us page or a contact page or something like that, those would all be created using a WordPress page instead. By having everything in terms of your basic site content created as a WordPress post, you can then use the WordPress category system to have all of those posts automatically linked in with your live site. The way WordPress works by default, when you first install WordPress on a domain name and you have a home page with that blog style listing where it's listing out each individual post that you've created on the site, starting with the most recent first. That's essentially what we're doing here, but we're doing it to where we have complete control over the most important aspects of it, at least. If you decide to use this system, or if you're already using it, let's say you've created a new category on your site with our previous work we were just going through. For any new category or existing category, you would need to have a WordPress category that matches up to it. Now, even though I'm not going to use this system on this particular website, I still wanted to be sure to demonstrate it to you, just to be positive that you could utilize this on your site if this is the tactic that you wanted to try out, or if this was the way your existing site had already been built. This might simply just be the easier way to continue building your site. So with that said, I'm first going to go over here to posts and categories. So I would want to have a category for each of the categories that I have on the website. So my brands, my buying guide, my consumer concerns, these three categories are the categories that I would want to create in this WordPress system here. Now I'm just going to do this for the brands category for this demonstration. But if this were a site where I was going to be doing this for all of them, I would have three categories. I would have a buying guide one and a consumer concerns one on top of the brands category too. So now what this is going to do is create a category page, a WordPress category page. This gives me the address of downcomforterguide.com/category/brands. This page would automatically list any WordPress posts that were created and associated with that brands category. So for example, I go here, I create some content, and then I simply add it to a category. When I publish that new post associated with that category, then that category page automatically gets updated. But if you look at this, there are a lot of things here about this that I don't like. Number one, I don't like how all of this stuff can't really be modified. If I didn't want to have the link up at the top, there's no way to change that. If I just wanted the title of this page to say brands, if I didn't want to have this category archives phrase there, I can't change that either. If I wanted to modify the way each of the individual posts was displayed on this category page, I also can't modify that. It's simply stuck like this, and it's going to list out all my content in this manner. So I'm not a fan of this default system, even though it's really easy to use. However, I have essentially learned how I can customize this to work for the way I like to create websites, to where I can change all these different aspects that I was just pointing out to you. I do this using the Weaver theme. Either of the Weaver themes can accomplish this. I'll be demonstrating how it works with Weaver Extreme though. If you happen to not be using Weaver, there may still be a way that you would be able to do this. There should be plugins that would be able to essentially do the same thing that the Weaver theme is going to be doing for me here. So it's not that it's impossible without Weaver, it's just that Weaver is the way that I teach to build websites, and so this is also the way that I teach to create these category pages too. So now, in Weaver, what I can do is, instead of using this default WordPress category page, I can create my own custom category page instead. And that's what I have basically done with the brands page that I have made. This brands page is a custom category page, except it's not automatically linking content to it like that WordPress category system would do. However, you can turn any WordPress page into a WordPress category page using Weaver Extreme. To do that, what you need to do is where it says template, you need to change that to say page with posts. Then you update your page. Once you have updated your page, this box right below the editor, the Weaver Extreme options for this page, it will add a new section to the bottom of it. This whole section right here didn't exist before until I changed that template in that drop-down box right here. So once I change the template and I update the page, then it gives me access to all of these settings. All I have to do to get this page to list out all of the posts within a particular category now is just add the slug for that category into this category box. So looking at my categories page, the slug is in this box right here. If I edited this, it would show up here. You can also just look at the columns over here. It'll tell you what the slug is. So my brand slug is simply brands. So now if I take that and punch it into my category box and update my page, then it's going to list out all of the brands posts for me. Now, this is on top of everything else that I've been doing here. So obviously I wouldn't be using both of these tactics all together. I'm just going to be doing one or the other. But I simply wanted to show you how you can turn a normal WordPress page into a WordPress category page instead and get it to automatically link up to all that content. Now, I mentioned before that I don't like the fact that you can't really customize this information even. You can still make some changes to that. Down here in the bottom, for example, these additional settings, mostly everything below all of these text boxes, can allow you to change how that information is going to get displayed. So let's say I don't want to have things like the author and the date and stuff, this information, for example, going along with it. And even down below, post it in brands, leave a reply. Maybe I just want to have the title and the description and maybe an image to go along with it. You can see my simple little change here now just gives me the title and the description. I don't have any kind of an image associated with this post, so it can't possibly show an image for me right now. But just checking on those two boxes for hide top and hide bottom info line will get rid of all that additional information. If you set featured images with your posts, you can even get it to display an image right next to it, to where it'll honestly look very, very similar to what I've done above here, where you'll have an image out beside all of this content for your posts, except you don't have to go back and edit these pages whenever you add new content into it. Now obviously, again, I'm not using this system with this particular site, so I'm not going to have one of these automated menus actually showing up on my website. But I did want to demonstrate how that actually works. Now the final piece to using this WordPress category system, but being able to customize it, is after you have created your custom brand page and you have the automatic listing of all the posts showing up there for you, the last thing you want to take care of is that original category page. When you click on view for one of your categories, you're at that category/brands address or whatever your slug is for your category. We don't want this page to be accessible. Another good reason why is because on your individual post, for example, your breadcrumb link's up at the top. This brands link points to category/brands. This brands link also points to that same location. So how do we override that page with this custom page that we have created? And the answer to that is actually pretty simple. I just use a plugin called Simple 301 Redirects. In the first box here, I just simply put everything except for the domain name for that category page. So wipe out the domain name, everything else that's left over, including the forward slashes. That's what I want to put into this first box. The second box is going to be the page I want to replace it with. That's simply going to be downcomforterguide.com/brands. So that's my actual brands page right here, the full URL of this page. So I want to replace that category page with this category page. That's essentially what this Simple 301 Redirects plugin is going to allow me to do. This is a free plugin. I've mentioned this plugin before, so you likely already know this. You may already even be using this. If you don't have it already and you do need it, you can just go to Plugins and Add New and search for it. It's completely free, downloaded through and installed through WordPress itself. So once I have this set up, this redirect set up, if I then tried to go to my category page right here, so I can refresh this page, it actually won't let me go there, no matter how hard I try. It automatically takes me back to this one. Even if I was on the individual post and I clicked on one of these links or these links that before would have taken me to the incorrect page, now it will take me to the correct one. And better than that, this redirect is the proper way to set up a change of address in the eyes of a search engine. So this doesn't use any kind of a poor tactic or anything like that. This is completely okay to do in the eyes of Google. So this is how you can override the default WordPress category system, but still use the automated side of that category system. So depending on how your existing site was set up, and or potentially depending on the work that you're planning on doing with this overhaul project, as far as the new pages that you want to create, category pages, the home page, you may decide to use your existing system. You may decide to completely redesign it. Maybe you want to use the code generators that I've provided for you. It ultimately doesn't really matter as far as which course you take there. I really would recommend to take the one that is going to be the easiest and the least time consuming for you to do, which most likely should be to just keep going with however your site was already built to add this new content into your live website. But I still wanted to make sure that both of these tactics were demonstrated for you, so you can make that decision for yourself ultimately. So now, this is the basic concept here of what you're wanting to do in this final step of the overhaul plan. You want to find all these new pages that you're going to be adding into your site. Go ahead and get those pages created and then work backwards. Get the page connected to a category page like you see here, and if needed, get the page and or your categories connected into your home page. Once you have the new pages created and everything connected back into your live website, like you have seen me do here with my Chez Moi page, then you're completely done with your overhaul project. I would still recommend, even when you finish everything, take one final look back over your live website. I'd also recommend looking back through your overhaul plans that you have written out one final time, just to make sure you have covered everything that you had set out to do. When you feel as though you have everything completed there, you're completely done. Congratulations on completing your Azon Overhaul project. Now, even though this is the end of your Azon Overhaul project, I'm not leaving you guys hanging here either. We're going to have one more class, and this final class is going to be covering extended maintenance on your Azon Overhaul project. This is going to be where we revisit the site down the road, not immediately after you have completed it. And you're going to be looking at things like traffic and Amazon stats and Google search rankings. So ultimately, try to figure out whether you have made progress in the areas that you were trying to make some improvements with your website, whether you have completed the goals that you have set out to complete with your overhaul work, and ultimately when to be able to figure out if more is ultimately going to need to be done to your site to get you to the point where you want it to be at, to be achieving the traffic or sales goals that you might have for your website. So this extended maintenance is going to be to teach you guys how to simply revisit these sites and make sure that your Azon Overhaul efforts have not gone wasted, to make sure that this work ends up being successful for you. So I'd like to go ahead and open up the floor now to the open Q&A session for the class. If you would like to ask me any questions having to do with adding the new content into your site, those are more than welcome at this moment. And I even welcome questions that you might have from other parts of the Azon Overhaul series. If you happen to be a little behind at the moment, it's quite all right if you want to ask me some questions having to do with whatever it is you might be working on at this time. That's a good question, Tina. She said, while I'm overhauling my site, Yoast says some of my slugs are longer than what is best. Do I worry about long slugs? I do sometimes. It kind of just depends on what my page is and how important it might be. For example, on my Down Comforter Guide site, my homepage, my category pages, and then the product pages are essentially the most important content that I have on that site. Those pages, I generally try to make the slug be really, really short. For my brands page, for example, it's just brands. I'll try to wipe out a lot of those understood words or phrases that might be a part of my keyword phrase. So I do personally kind of prefer to go short on my slugs, short and meaningful. However, I don't necessarily do that with all of my informational pages. Actually, on this site, I believe I shortened all of them. I don't think I left any of them long on this one. I went short and meaningful on this side with all of my slugs, actually. I don't always do that, though. I have a lot of sites where my informational articles, I won't worry about shortening the slug on them. I'll just leave it however WordPress automatically generates it. But yeah, personally, I'm not a big fan of the really long slugs. I like a more short and meaningful URL for my pages. I have had search rankings using both tactics, though. I don't necessarily think that using a really long slug, I don't think it's a deal breaker or anything with Google. But there may just be a certain point, like what Yost is saying, where your slug reaches a certain length and maybe Google's just not going to process any more information than that. Or it could even, I suppose it could try to give it some kind of a penalty for going too long, just because someone could be trying to stuff keywords in the URL. I find it to be a really good place to put keywords, and so that's why I like to go short and sweet and to go after that primary word or topic, whatever it is I'm trying to go after on that specific page. Yeah, definitely no harm, no foul if you shorten them. And personally, I mean, I do prefer to shorten them. The only time I'd say completely don't worry about your URLs if you just don't want to have to bother with them is your informational content pages. Those are not going to be as important. All the rest of the pages on the site, I would at least look at it. Oh, I gotcha. I see what you're saying. Um, I mean, there's definitely nothing wrong with editing them. If the words aren't really meaningful, that that it's going to try to shorten it down to, I would consider, if you don't really have a good keyword in your title that's going to get shrunken down, if most of it's getting stripped out from stop words and the couple of remaining words, maybe they're vague, look around and see if there could be a different word that you could use instead, something that maybe was a little more meaningful, if that's possible to do for the subjects you're referring to. That's a good question. Also, Tina, she's asking, should I no index categories, and same for archives, or should, given a choice, categories be allowed even if you have not written unique excerpts for the category pages overall? In general, if you're using the automated system that I taught during tonight's class, I usually recommend no indexing the kind of things you have mentioned. In the plugin I use, SEO Ultimate, I have a number of these default values that I can prevent indexing of. I'll actually end up doing this on almost everything. If you have comments enabled, you may leave those two. But for the most part, I would disable indexing of a vast majority of the types of content that are automatically created by WordPress like that. And again, this is more important. I didn't have it set up on my side already because I'm not using that automated method. I went the more manual method. So I don't have category archive pages on my site. I don't have tag archive pages or date-based archives and things of that nature. Your question, though, in terms of if you're creating these category pages and you're not putting unique excerpts on them, should you prevent the indexing of them? In a lot of cases, I would say yes, but you also have to make sure that there's another way for the search engines to find all the pages that that category is linking up to. If you're using the tactic that I showed tonight, where you're creating a custom category page to replace the default category archive, then you can prevent indexing of the category archive because your default category page will be the one that is actually being used. You would not want both of them to be indexed, definitely. Some people do get a lot of traffic from category pages on their websites. I think it just kind of depends on the site and the topics they're going from. I do have a lot of sites of mine that get pretty good traffic on their category pages, a lot of times because I am targeting my category page to something in most cases. For example, on this one, Down Comforter Brands is most certainly a keyword phrase that has traffic on it. And on top of that, I could not only potentially rank on this page for this phrase, I could feasibly rank for phrases relating to the individual brands too. Right, duplicate content is my biggest concern too, without having the custom-made excerpt. Ultimately though, let's say you're creating one of these custom category pages. I guess that's the question is, are you just using the default WordPress category page, or will you create your own custom page that still uses the duplicate excerpts, basically? If you would use this page, okay, default page and post hybrid. If you're using the default category page, and you're not replacing it with your own custom category page, you probably would want to still let that category archive get indexed. Simply because, here's the biggest reason. If you don't have a sitemap, I mean like an actual page on your site that links up to all the other pages that are on your site, then you have to consider that the only way Google can reach your content is through links. And so if you prevent the indexing of an entire category page, and those category pages that are linked from it, if they're not linked up from any other part of your website, then they simply won't get indexed. A human readable sitemap, not an XML sitemap. So you basically want, Google needs to be able to land on your home page and navigate through indexable links to every single other page that is on your live website. If it can't do that, then you do need to loosen the reins on the indexing, or the not indexing, I should say, of particular areas. Even then though, I would still consider it from the perspective of site structure. if you had default category pages and you prevented Google from being able to index them, and then you just gave Google essentially a home page and a sitemap to be able to index, to get all of your links from, you're going to have a completely flat website structure when Google looks at it. The actual structuring that you're doing with the categories, unless they are linked up, from those category pages and Google can index those things, then you won't get the benefits of structuring your content unless Google can index that structure too. So you would either want to let it index the default category page, or if you were going to prevent indexing of it, then I would recommend having your own custom category page created that it could index. Yeah, internal linking, essentially, like, what you see on my page here. They have to be able to navigate through the links on your site. When it lands on this page, if this was a category page that it couldn't index, there'd be no way for it to find these individual brand pages if they weren't linked up from anywhere else. And even if they were, if they're not getting indexed as linking from this category page, then you use the structure benefits too. So I would worry more about the structure than I would duplicate content if you're not customizing excerpts. For other people that might be wondering what in the world I'm talking about, on a post, if I go up to screen options, I can enable the excerpt. And this gives me a new page, or a new box here for the excerpt, which is essentially a summary of this particular post. This will automatically show up as the description on these pages. Right here, this description will be my excerpt instead. But if you don't put in a custom excerpt, then it's just going to pull content from your post. And so essentially your category archive page can be a lot of duplicated content that comes from your individual post if you're not customizing these excerpts. Yeah, Tina. I just want to make sure that was all explained for people that might not have known what I was referring to there. Long story short though, give a way for Google to index all the parts of your site and make sure it can index the structure of your website. And ultimately, if you have a really big concern about duplicate content, do a little bit of work to add in even one sentence of content as an excerpt would, in my opinion, be better than a paragraph of duplicated content that just came straight from the post. Or you could even have a little bit of content at the top of your category page, make a custom category page, put a few paragraphs of content at the top, and just have link listings down at the bottom of the page. Don't even have a description or an excerpt is another way to go to avoid having to write custom excerpts and also to avoid potential duplicate content penalties. What is the best way to include enough links for a mobile smartphone on your website since your pages are long viewed on smaller screens? Someone was viewing your page on a smartphone and mentioned it could use more links. They're not a marketer, but I already have quite a few links, including above the fold when I made the website on a desktop PC. As a side note, the site is responsive and it looks good on phones. It's just long, of course, in comparison to a desktop monitor. How do I please both crowds? Personally, I try not to. Everyone talks about mobile nowadays, about, mobile's 50% of the traffic and this and that and the other. That might be true. There is a lot of mobile traffic out there, but the vast majority of purchases that are being made on physical goods online are being made not on a cell phone, simply because of security concerns. Personally, I will not punch my PayPal password or my credit card number into my cell phone. I never have, I never will. It's just not secure. People can intercept that kind of stuff. And I know I'm not the only person that feels that way. I've seen stats from my own website, some mobile traffic and desktop traffic. The desktop traffic is buying a lot more. So I do, if I'm going to cater to one, if I'm going to please one crowd or the other, I'd rather please the desktop crowd and not the mobile crowd. Even though mobile can bring you a lot of traffic, it's ultimately not going to bring you the most sales. You're going to get more sales off of desktops and laptop computers. As far as links go, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily have too much concern about that. They may have simply overlooked maybe the main menu at the top of your site. I don't know if I can force it. Yeah, I can force it to do it here. In the Weaver Extreme theme, on a cell phone, it'll get rid of the top menu, kind of like what you see here, and it turns it into these 3 links, and I have to click it to expand my menu. So it's possible they may have overlooked your menu completely. Yeah, and I guess that's also part of the problem is when you get traffic on a cell phone, like there's been a ton of times where I'm at a store and I'm about to buy something, and I'll pull out my cell phone and I'll go and I'll make sure I'm, getting a good deal on it. I'll make sure maybe I can't get it on Amazon for $100 cheaper or something like that. And as long as my research turns out good, I'll go ahead and buy it in the store. If not, then I don't go ahead and buy it from my mobile phone right there. I go back home and I get on my desktop and I'll purchase it from there. And I do believe that a lot of other people are doing the same thing. Unfortunately, there's no way to make that connection between, hey, I just sent you some mobile traffic and now they're buying over on their desktop, so I should get credit for that commission. I look forward to the days when they can implement some kind of deep tracking system into affiliate networks that would actually track stuff like that. Nowadays, they just simply can't do it, unfortunately. So I do try to target the crowd that I feel like is the most likely to be buying from me. And ultimately, you can't make everybody happy online. You can do everything absolutely perfect and please 6 billion people in the entire world, and you could still have the other billion people hating you and thinking what you do is the worst. And just people have their own opinions. Everyone's different, and you can literally kill yourself jumping through hoops trying to please everyone. So I try to look at the largest demographic, the one that's most important to the business, especially in terms of the bottom line. And if I'm going to cater to anybody, that's the group that I would cater to. You're quite welcome, Tina. Glad that was helpful for you.